Good morning, folks. Here we are, left and right. It's March the 27th, Wednesday, and I'm here with, again, Mark Guerringue sitting in the left chair. He's a newspaper publisher. One of his newspapers carries my column, and I am a columnist from retired teacher from Lovell, Maine, and a conservative. So I'm on the right today, and there's a lot going on, and I'm not sure. I suppose the two big stories that have broken in the last few days that will probably dominate discussion today would be one, the Mueller Report has been issued, and we've gotten a summary of that from the Attorney General. And the other is broke yesterday, the Jussie Smollett case in Chicago where charges were broomed. So, but I think we'll start with these questions, question number one at least from our producer. All right, here we go. Now that the Mueller Report has exonerated the Trump campaign from colluding with the Russians in the 2016 presidential election, would it be politically savvy or foolish for the Democrats to pursue an obstruction of justice claim against the president? You want to grab that one?
No, go ahead, start. I mean, what do you think about the Mueller Report in general?
In general, I mean, I'm glad it's issued. I'm glad it's, I think that the summary is probably pretty accurate. The whole page, the whole summary would likely be thousands of pages of interviews and so forth. So I don't intend to read it in full. Somebody will, I suppose. It didn't come up with any evidence that the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians, which didn't surprise me. I've been saying that for years.
Well, it didn't say that. It said it didn't come up that it was criminally prosecutable. It said that he wasn't exonerated. He just wasn't. It wasn't the criminal charges they didn't bring. I mean, isn't that what it was? Right. That's what I mean. I don't have it in front of me, but that's the. I thought it was a 65-word summary by Barr, Attorney General Barr, and I thought it said it wasn't. He wasn't exonerated, but it was not.
Here it is. But as noted above, special counsel did not find that the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in these efforts to influence the campaign, despite multiple offers from Russian-affiliated individuals to assist the Trump campaign.
Yeah.
No evidence. So.
Now, do you believe that report?
Yes.
And why would you do that?
Because there's no evidence.
No, but I mean, I guess when we had this discussion 3 or 4 months ago about when this investigation started, I said that Mueller was like a straight arrow and was credible in doing this, and you spent 10 minutes telling me why he was partisan and not credible. So I'm just wondering why you accept this report. Is it because you like the results?
I accept that there's no evidence of collusion. And it doesn't surprise me that Mueller couldn't find any, because there never was any. Now, I don't think Mueller should ever have taken this case. If he was so brilliant, and if he was a former director of the FBI and an attorney himself, then he should have known that his good buddy, Jim Comey, and the acting director McCabe and all the rest of them, Strzok and Page and so forth, that worked for him early on, he should never have taken this, because if you're a special prosecutor, then you're there to investigate a crime. So if he agreed to take the case, which he did right away,
yeah, but how many
Rosenstein appointed him, he would say, okay, what's the crime?
Yeah, but
there is no crime. Where's the evidence that there is a crime? And there was none. So he should never have taken it.
Well,
it was bad judgment.
No, it wasn't. Number one is that
taken it.
They had over 100. The Trump campaign had over 100 contacts with Russians. So there was definitely smoke and a reason to take on this investigation. And it resulted in how many indictments from Mueller? 60, 70?
So half of them being Russian agents in St.
but
Petersburg.
That came from the investigation, though. So
you're saying that there was collusion between Trump and the Russians?
I've always thought, I've never thought that Trump tried to undermine our country with the Russians. I don't believe that. Didn't believe it then. I don't think that now. But do I think he's just, did he exercise really poor judgment in meeting with the Russians and having all these contacts with the Russians and Trump Tower and all that? Absolutely. I mean, they should have, anybody have said this, any politician, that if you were approached by the Russians, you would turn it right over to the FBI, and they didn't. Now, it didn't meet a criminal test, and I agree with that. And so, but I do think the investigation was warranted because of all these contacts that everybody knew about. So, yes.
Everybody knew about.
Well, I mean, people knew about the Trump Tower meeting. They knew about Trump negotiating with the Russians to build the Trump Tower in Moscow in 2015 and 2016. So there was a lot of red flags, and that's why you have investigations, because there were red flags. Now, it turned out there wasn't enough evidence there for a prosecution, which I accept, and it doesn't surprise me.
So Trump is a hotel builder.
Yeah.
Why is it a red flag?
Because he's running for president. He's running for president.
He started it before he ran for president.
But he continued it in 2016. When you run for president, you don't negotiate with the Russians and promise Putin a $50 million penthouse when you're running for president. I mean, that's just common sense, and he didn't do that. Now, but that's just Trump.
Did he promise? Is that true? Do we have evidence that he promised Putin a $50 million penthouse?
It's been reported.
There's a lot of things that have been reported that have turned out to be complete BS. Are you saying
he wasn't negotiating with the Russians for Trump Tower when he was campaigning?
No, I'm not saying that. It looks like he was.
Okay, then there we go. So that's that. So he was doing it.
You make it sound nefarious. I mean, the guy's a businessman. That's what he does.
He was running for president. He was dealing with one of our adversaries.
We've never had a businessman run for president, have we?
Steve Forbes, for one.
Okay. So he runs a media empire, and I don't know what else he does.
He probably wasn't dealing with the Russians. You just haven't. I mean, if you're trying to defend,
are you supposed to suspend all your business practices when you think about running for president? I mean, he's the only.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that at all. I just said that. So you're saying it's okay for people who run for president to have business dealings with our adversaries. If that's okay, I accept it. But if that's what you're saying,
okay. So they're above the table business dealings that he had. I mean, he wasn't doing it under the table. Let me contrast that with his opponent.
No. He said during the campaign, and he said it afterward, that he had no dealings with Russia, that he didn't know Putin. He said that many, many, many times, and it was only through the New York Times that exposed that story. And it wasn't long ago. It was in the last 6 months. But it's a ridiculous argument, Tom, because if you let's just leave it that if
I didn't bring it up, you did.
No, I'm just saying let's just leave it that if you think it's okay for people who are running for president to conduct business with our adversaries, then we can go on from there and just disagree.
With our adversaries. Do I think it's okay for somebody to do it? I don't see anything wrong with it as long as they are legitimate business deals.
Okay.
No, I don't.
Okay.
And I think that we should have more business people run for president, run for office, instead of just senators and congressmen and people,
Yeah, I'm not saying that.
Look where we are.
As long as you're on the record as saying it's okay for people running for president to deal with our adversaries, then that's just a different point of view that I don't share.
So, Mueller, I spent 10 minutes telling you about some of his dealings when he was the acting U.S. attorney in Boston during some mafia cases, when he put people in jail that turned out not to be guilty, and they spent 30 years in jail, and it cost over $100 million. Those guys were paid for having been, wrongly prosecuted, and Mueller, was right in it. So they knew that these guys didn't do it. Now, they were gangsters. They had committed other crimes, but not the one for which they were put away. So that was what I was referring to.
Well, no, I know, but you are undermining his credibility with this report. That's why I'm wondering, how can you accept this report from someone who you don't have any...
I don't trust him, not in the least. I think that this was a frame-up. I think that this was done by...
And you don't trust these results then? So, I mean, it could be either way. Trump could be... So you're saying if Mueller's can't be trusted, then the report doesn't have any credibility either. That's all I'm just trying to connect the dots here.
Is it possible for somebody who is ethically tainted to produce a document that's true? I think it is.
Oh, in this case, it's true, though, because you like the results.
There's so much attention on this. The media this has been the #1 story since before Trump was elected, especially since
Yeah,
he
it
was
should have been,
elected, since he
people-
was nominated certainly in June
Yeah,
of
but
20.
people were being indicted left and right. It's a big story.
Nothing to do with Russian collusion.
Flynn?
None of those indictments
Flynn's
had anything
contacts
to do.
with Russia, and the fact that he lied to the
It had
vice
nothing
president.
to do with collusion with Russia for the campaign. It had
Flynn-
nothing to do with that.
Flynn was having connections with Russia that he lied to the vice president. That's why he got fired.
That's why Trump fired him. That's
Right.
right. What he did was he met with the Russian ambassador, but he was already on the transition team. He had worked for Obama and been fired by Obama, and now he was working for Trump, and he was meeting with the Russian ambassador.
Are you
Now that
defending
is
him?
a legitimate thing for somebody to do when you're national security advisor
why did Trump fire him?
to the president-elect.
Why did Trump fire him?
Because the word was that because Mike Pence said, when you did meet with Russian ambassador, did you discuss the sanctions that Obama had put on the table,
Right.
but had put on the Russians? And at first, Flynn said no. And then it came out that he did talk about those sanctions. And so Pence recommended that Trump fire him, and he did.
Okay, so fine. You're making my case. But so do you think that the...
Well, that's just what happened.
Right,
That-
no,
at least as,
right, but
as
that's a
was
Russian
reported.
connection. My point was that there's this Russian connections up and down with Trump and Putin.
Is
So-
that illegal? Is
No,
that a
it doesn't
Russian?
meet the-
Is
doesn't
that
meet the test.
collusion?
It
He was
does-
already
no.
elected at that point. Trump was already elected president. So there's no collusion with the Russians to win the election.
I believe
That's
the
not
reports
evidence
that
of
there
that.
wasn't collusion to the extent that's, one thing that, and this is why, and I think this is actually good for the Democrats that this Mueller report came out like this, because otherwise, if it,
Really, I'd be interested to hear that. Your
Why?
rationale for that.
because if this had been more serious than what the,
report.
yeah, it had been more critical or recommended, whatever it was, in some way more critical. And we still don't know what's in the whole report, so who knows. But now at least Trump can run his victory lap, and I think he deserves to, because he's been exonerated, basically, right? But
Although the report says this is not to exonerate.
yeah, but right, it's not to exonerate. So I'm actually conflicting my own sentence there a few minutes ago. But I think now it's just going to be put aside. If it had been more critical of him, then the Democrats would have just continued to pursue this path, which I think is politically is a wrong path. To try to hang, to impeach, to try to impeach him or to impeach him. And we know, and one thing is that the only reason why there was never any hard evidence, and I always remember what Bob Woodward, journalist Bob Woodward said months and months and months ago. He said, you have to be careful with this because Nixon was only impeached, only was forced to resign because they found that tape. Of all the things he did, of all the political stuff going back, it was once they found that hard evidence. And Clinton, remember, he was only impeached not for what he did, but for when he testified and he lied about it. So now Trump, they learned, right? The Republicans learned that they didn't allow Trump to testify with Mueller, because probably he would have lied, and then he would have been impeached. So they learned that lesson. So to impeach somebody, or for the Democrats to impeach Trump, they needed a real smoking gun. And thankfully, there isn't one, because I don't think impeachment would have been good for the country, because the Republicans learned that impeaching Clinton wasn't good for the Republicans. Clinton left office with a 65% favorable rating. So I think this allows, why it's good for the Democrats, it allows it to be put away. And now the Democrats can talk about the real issues.
I don't think it'll be put away, because yesterday, when he was meeting with Netanyahu, he said, now it's time to investigate how this originated, which I think it's past time to do that. I've always wondered, and I've said on this show several times, there are documents that have been redacted. And Devin Nunes, during his investigation of this, was asking the Justice Department for documentation, the FBI for documentation about the origins of this, which are, to me, nefarious. To me, this has been a frame-up from the beginning. I agree with Nunes in that assessment. But he was not able to get an FBI to release them. But Trump had the authority all along to say, he'd get documents, but they'd be mostly blacked out. And so he'd say, I want the redactions. I want to know what was in the original document. And the FISA application, was part of that. Mm. So Trump I wondered, why doesn't Trump just say, these are now declassified? And so please release them, because it would have helped his case. I'm still not sure why he didn't do that, but I expect you're going to see that stuff come out now. I think it's because, and other experts, who look at this, have been following this more closely than I am, will say his lawyers said don't release those things because that would be fodder and to hurt you politically and give, especially since the Democrats looked like they were going to take the House and did indeed take the House and they have the power of impeachment, that it might hurt you. So now that the Mueller case has essentially cleared him, hasn't exonerated him and expressly, but it has cleared him. That's not hanging over his head anymore. Right. And so I expect he's going to issue all these documents. He's going to declassify them, and I think he's going to open an investigation into, or ask the Attorney General to do so, into McCabe, Comey, Strzok, Page, Brennan, Clapper, and all the rest of them that set this up. And it was only 2 weeks ago that Brennan, Obama's CIA director, was saying that the president was treasonous, an agent of an enemy power. And now all of a sudden, 2 days ago, he said, oh, gee, I think I was getting some bad information. I mean, why? CNN or MSNBC, one's got Clapper, the other one's got Brennan. I forget which one is which. Why did they hire these people to go on and say this over and over and over and over? I mean, the media has egg on its face. It not only has egg on its face, I think has lost enormous credibility. What do you think about that?
I disagree with you. I don't think that people, one thing is that the polls show that voters really don't care about this very much. I mean, you and I do because we like politics, but for most people, I don't want to say regular people because you and I are regular people, but for most people, it's just not an issue. So I think if Trump pursues it at that level, then I think it's a waste of his time. He should stick to the issues. I think we're just going to be moving on and talk about issues, which I think is a good thing. I think it's a good thing for the country. I think it's a good thing for the country that he wasn't found, that this report wasn't found that he was somehow in real collusion with Russia.
Well, good. I'm glad you said that.
No, I really do. I mean, I think Trump is not doesn't represent our country very well, and I don't want him to be president, but I also don't want our president to be colluding with the Russians. I think that could really have hurt us more than this. I think this was a good exercise in democracy. We have special prosecutors. I know you don't like special prosecutors. I mean, the Republicans went after had 18 hearings going after Hillary and Benghazi, and that turned up nothing. They went through 30,000 of her emails and found like 3 of them with small c's that were classifieds or something. So both sides do it.
They couldn't go through the 30,000 emails that disappeared and were trashed, even though they were subpoenaed by the House.
What about Kushner now? What about Trump's kids who are using WhatsApp for their? I mean, he's and so here's Hillary vilified for using a private server, and now we got these close advisors, family members who are using WhatsApp to do their business.
In their business or in their
talking to Saudi
business?
Your government business.
Oh.
So
Okay.
it's, and I'm just saying
So
it's both
WhatsApp
sides.
can be,
Huh?
they should be in secure channels and State
Yeah,
Department
WhatsApp
channels.
is like
and
I have
things like
WhatsApp.
that. I haven't. I never use it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it can be easily, what do you call it?
Compromised.
Yeah. All right.
It's not supposed to be, but I mean, for mere mortals it isn't, but certainly for people who are in that business. But anyway, so that'll be the issues, and the issues that are coming up for the Democrats, I think they have good ones. I mean, they have his campaign promises. I mean, he campaigned on reducing the deficit, which is we got the worst deficit we ever had. He campaigned on reducing the trade deficit. We've had the record trade deficit. He campaigned on having the Mexicans pay for the wall, which he didn't. Obviously, that was a joke. And he campaigned on health insurance and health care, and nothing has happened with that. So
Well, yeah,
so there's
something's
just-
happening with that. And I'll get to it as soon as I say, I'll repeat, because I've said this before, that agents of the Obama administration, most of which I've already just named, have perjured themselves, have lied to the FBI. Some of them were FBI agents lying to other investigators. They've lied under oath in congressional testimony.
Yeah.
And they were doing this to investigate the presidential candidate of the opposing party. Now, I don't think that, and I don't know of anything in American history that comes up to that. That's abuse of power for political gain. And that I think is very much worth investigating. The Inspector General of the Justice Department, Horowitz, is already investigating. It hasn't gotten, he hasn't leaked any information.
You've got, you always bring up these things, which I can't refute because I don't read and I don't go on the dark web and where you get all the information. But I mean, the Justice Department is packed with Republicans and Trump people who have been appointed by Trump. So why aren't these investigations popping up? They did with Hillary. I mean, I don't understand that. You always bring up these.
If it were packed with, I don't think it is packed with Trump people. I think it's packed with career government officials that hate Trump. Yeah, he's one of them. I mean, he approved the FISA application in one of its 4 iterations.
They're all Trump Republicans. And
They're Republicans,
I know,
but they're not Trump
okay,
Republicans.
So it's the ones that you don't like what they say that you think aren't Trump Republicans. But
I see that the never-Trumpers in the Republican Party and the Democrats work very closely together, and both of them hate Trump to the point where they were willing to take him down and abuse their government power to do so.
okay,
I think that's very
okay.
serious.
That's your opinion, but okay. So what else? What else is on your agenda?
Speaking of, you brought up health care and Obamacare. So another thing Trump did, I think Monday, was he authorized the Justice Department to join this Texas suit, which says that Obamacare, you're familiar, that Obamacare is unconstitutional, especially since the mandate to buy health insurance and to tax people who don't buy it, that is off the table now. That was the only justification that Supreme Court
John
Roberts used to say that it was constitutional. He was the swing vote for that, you might recall.
Yeah.
So now that's the basis of the Texas suit. Now Trump didn't join that suit as a, what do you call it, friend of the court or whatever it is. And now he's reversed that and said, yes, we will. But he wanted to preserve things like coverage for pre-existing conditions, and I forget what else, 1 or 2 other provisions of Obamacare that they wanted to maintain. I think they still can, even if the thing is unconstitutional. They can, in separate legislation say.
So you want to overturn Obamacare? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I don't think it should ever have been made.
And why is that?
Because I don't think you can't force the American people to buy stuff. The federal government can't. State governments can with car insurance, but it's taking power that the Constitution did not give to the federal government. So from a strict constructionist point of view, I'd say it's unconstitutional.
Okay, but they could certainly provide incentives to do that. I mean, we know that. I mean, road building has been that way forever, where the federal government tells the states, and I think in New Hampshire was that years ago, where I may have this wrong, where they forced us to adopt the seatbelt laws, New Hampshire, or else where they were going to withhold federal funds.
Yeah.
So outside of the constitutionality of it, so there are ways the federal government can get what they want. But outside of the constitutionality, do you support Obamacare in general, or do you support more of a, and I hate to use the word Medicare for all, because that's just sort of a catch-all, but where do you stand on these, on health insurance in general?
I would say that...
are you a free market person, or?
I am. Yeah, I am. And I think, some of the Democratic candidates that are now saying we want to abolish private health care companies, then,
where have you had your health insurance for your whole career?
Well, I think you know. I get it from
Taxpayers.
I get it from the Maine
Right,
Education
the taxpayers have
Association.
paid for it.
They have paid for most of it.
Right.
That's correct.
Right. So I find it interesting that it's often people who don't have to suffer with private health care, health insurance, that are advocates for the free. I know a couple of the candidates for the congressional candidates were the same way. They came from the Army, and they were all for free enterprise, free competition for health care, but except they didn't have to deal with it. And I can tell you, for a small employer, health insurance, for most people, it's the most onerous thing that's facing us. And I'm not an advocate of nationalizing the delivery system. I mean, I think that we should have competition with hospitals and clinics the way the military does. The military doesn't own Boeing or Lockheed, right? They have our military, our systems are built by private contractors, but the
Yes.
government runs it. And I think
Well,
that's
the government negotiates contracts with
and
it.
that's the way I believe it should be with health insurance, because I'll tell you, it is probably as a small employer, it is the worst thing to deal with. I mean, to deal with the insurance companies and the PBMs. I mean, now we have, out of our 50 employees, we always have 5 or 6 people we spend more management time dealing with health insurance issues, only because of the insurance companies.
When I retired from teaching 9 years ago, I was no longer being subsidized, except $285 a month the union would subsidize. I had to pay $15,000 a year to maintain the policy I had through Anthem, and that was a big nut. It was actually $1,500 a month, so it was even more than that. So, about that, I guess. And then when I finally went off it, when I got Medicare, another government,
How's that working
turning
for you?
66, well, I mean, I had to buy the supplementary
Right.
policy,
But, I mean, generally,
which my
does it work?
union subsidizes for me,
Right. But
but not for
how's
my
your
wife.
care?
So I've had to. My care, hasn't changed much. I mean, I have to
So
stay
Medicare
within the
works for
network
you.
of Anthem's network.
So
and
Medicare
whatever.
works.
Does Medicare work? Not really, because when the Bridgeton Hospital fired all those doctors, one of them was mine, my primary care doctor. So then I went over to this other woman used to live in Denmark named Susan Data, but she's with Intermed now in Portland. And so I asked her, Roseanne, my wife, has her for a doctor, but they weren't accepting Medicare patients. Why? Because they do services for Medicare patients, and the remuneration they get from the government is enough to cover their costs. So they're losing money on Medicare. Now, that's an unsustainable system. So for me, she did accept me because I was used to teach her kids and personal connections. So she overrode that. But that's the problem with Medicare. So it didn't hurt me yet, no, but it could.
I mean, most people on Medicare, anybody I've talked to, and I'm sure our viewers would have the same experience, they're happy with Medicare. I mean, they just can't wait to get on Medicare to get off of private insurance. For one thing, and Medicare, by the way, is the biggest driver in healthcare reform by driving costs down. Any hospital, the entity they're most afraid of is Medicare, in terms of if they overcharge, their
Because they
coding is
have
wrong.
standard charges for things.
Yeah,
Yes.
because they can
Okay.
fight the insurance companies. They can this is a private thing, screw them. But they
not
can't
the
with
government.
Medicare. The fines are incredible for the government. So, but anyway, that's another issue. But I think it's the fact that we spend, as you know, our country spends twice as much on per capita on health insurance than the other country, and our outcomes aren't really any better. And it just keeps employees from moving from job to job. It's expensive. I mean, the delivery works. I mean, anybody who goes to any hospital, generally speaking, people have complaints, but Memorial's great. Any hospital is good and specialties are good, but it's not that. It's the insurance part, and it's the dealing with the drug companies. I mean, not the big pharmas, but the PBMs who handle the drugs for the insurance companies. I mean, it's a mess.
It is a mess. My wife is a healthcare provider. She has a private counseling practice, and her biggest headache is dealing with the insurance companies that her
So
clients.
why not just eliminate it? I mean, you don't have to pay. I mean, it just seems like if we can run our military that way, and we can run our highway departments that way, Why not? Why not? I mean, it's just the administrative costs. I mean, all the insurance companies. I mean, it's just and I always go back to the basic discussion that if we could, as a society and as a country, if we could ration it, in other words, if we morally could say, forget it, we can have a competitive system, and if you can't afford health insurance, don't take it. We won't provide it for you. But if you get sick, we're not gonna accept you either. We're not gonna help you. But we can't do that, right? As a society, we can't.
And we
I mean,
can't.
people who don't have health insurance, they go to the hospital, they go to the emergency room, and then everybody else pays for it.
Yes.
So once you're in that category, right? Once you've accepted us as a society, that we're going to take care of people's health whether we want to or not. We can't refuse their health.
I accept that.
Then what's the best method?
Right.
So
I
it isn't.
think that is what it comes down
It is
to.
not a capitalist system, because in any other market, you just, if you don't like cable TV, don't buy it. You know.
During the Reagan administration, it was passed that no emergency room can refuse to hear it. So that was the basis of what you were just saying.
Yeah.
Now, but that doesn't mean that it was a federal law or ruling or executive order, whatever it was. It was, it's in force. But the way that is met should be left up to states, and let the states, as laboratories of democracy, the way the founders intended them to be, let them innovate and find, best ways to deal with that. And if other states want to mimic what this state did over here that was successful, let them do it. I think that's a kind of competition. It's a rather than to have a one-size-fits-all federal government mandate, this is how you're going to do it. You can only buy these kinds of policies and not those kinds of policies. When I was paying that much money for private health insurance for however many years it was, I was much rather have had a huge deductible, say a $6,000-7,000 deductible, and then have the policy kick in. But I couldn't buy those anymore because Obamacare outlawed them. And so it was. I also have a pre-existing condition.
What do you mean Obamacare outlawed them? We have people on go on the exchange. That's where we get our insurance.
Well,
and you get the bronze plan, the silver plan, the gold plan. That's the exchange.
You couldn't. You had to have pregnancy coverage. You had to have other kinds of coverages. Those plans did have to have that they didn't used to have, and so they ended up becoming more expensive than they were before.
Right, because the other policies weren't very good. I mean, they were. That's a trade-off. But that goes back to this interesting. The Republicans, when they didn't want any of it. So certainly the key thing about the Obamacare was, which I forget the term, whatever the care of services were, with the pregnancy and all that. But the big one was pre-existing conditions. That was the big one, because before people were screened out for pre-existing conditions.
I was one of them. I had to stay. There's one of the things that kept me in teaching. I have this circulatory issue I've had since I was 33.
So your life changed, because if Obamacare had been 20 years ago, maybe you wouldn't be. Maybe you would be a rock star now instead of a retired teacher.
Yeah, not much chance of that, but I'd be a great singer if it weren't for my voice.
Yeah, but that's the point. I mean, that's the point of it, is that it keeps people in their jobs only for health care. I mean,
it stuck me that way. Yes,
and I think that it would just stimulate the economy, and it's just every other Western country in the world doesn't do it our way, and it's not like it's not like it's cheaper. If one thing was, if we had with these inequities and say, oh my gosh, but the way we do it now, we're saving money, but we're not. We're spending twice as much as any other country. We can't spend any more money on health care. I mean, it's almost impossible to spend any more money on health care. So it's so inefficient the way it works now. I mean, it's a mess. But anyway.
Well, then we also have, a huge problem about, people they just don't take care of themselves.
Oh, sure.
They eat too much, they smoke, they use drugs, they drink too much, all those things. And that's the cause of much of, the chronic stuff that you see in emergency rooms and in the hospitals and so forth. And so they say, okay, you're only eligible for a basic level of care. We're going to keep body and soul together, as long as you continue to overeat and smoke and so forth. I'd be open to something like that if a state were to do it and the federal government would allow them to do it. But we're not going to you're not going to fix every little single thing that happens to you as a result of your own stupid decisions.
Well, and I always thought that was a trade-off. Like we always have trade-offs, right? And everything is that by having more managed care in the sense of having the government, whether it's the state or federal, tell us what to do, that you're giving up your civil rights. I mean, I'm all for the government, the state, or health, whomever, is to say, look, if you have these, conditions where you're not taking care of yourself, you're smoking, whatever, your premiums are up.
That's a good idea.
That's a penalty.
Yeah.
But it's a civil rights
life
issue.
insurance companies do that.
Yeah.
Because I had to pay higher life insurance rates too because
Yeah.
of my condition.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't like that, but that's what I had to do.
Yeah, so-
While I had kids, anyway.
So how do you think Trump is doing in general, like how he's being set up for the 2020 election?
Well, I think it wasn't General Kelly as chief of staff, but somebody, he has decided to discipline his own tongue and his own tweeting. I mean, he's still doing it.
Who?
Trump.
Trump is?
Bit more so than he was. He's not doing as many stupid things.
Didn't
as
he just
was.
spend last weekend or 2 weekends ago, with 50 tweets, half of them about dissing John McCain?
Yeah.
Oh, so this is new in the last week.
Well, I think what he said about John McCain was true. John McCain did release the dodgy dossier.
He was Mitch McConnell.
John McCain sent one of his staffers to England to see Christopher Steele and get a copy
Mitch
of the
McConnell.
dossier, and then he turned it over to the FBI.
Mitch McConnell was behind that, though.
Well, I don't know about the Mitch McConnell
Yeah.
connection. How do you know about that?
That's what I read.
But you don't know where.
I don't remember. But I just think, so you think it's okay for him to, dishonor a war veteran? He wasn't just criticized. Why is he doing it now? The guy's been dead for 6 months.
That's dumb. I don't think he's
So I'm
helping
just
himself
refuting you
politically.
saying that whoever said he's reining in his tweets, I think he's getting more unhinged.
Well, I think, okay, I agree. What he's doing isn't helping him politically, but at least it's true what he's saying about John McCain.
I don't believe that, but
Okay, and John McCain voted against the repeal of Obamacare.
He did.
It was the final vote, and he did it out of personal animosity toward Trump. And that you think that because McCain was a war hero, therefore he's above criticism. Can't say anything about him for his actions subsequent to that.
I don't think I think when he was alive, I just think it's just very disrespectful for someone who's been dead for 6 months is to criticize someone like that. I mean, this is common decency.
It is kind of dumb.
There's
And so,
no reason. There's just absolutely no reason for it.
And the husband of Kellyanne Conway, George Conway, that little tete-a-tete that he was having with him for several days, it was also dumb. But that's his own issue.
Yeah, that's
but as
him.
far as saying, I got more electoral votes than anybody has in the last several decades or whatever it was, I mean, that's factually wrong.
Right.
And to say
Yeah.
stupid, that's what I meant. When
Yeah.
he says stupid things
Right.
like that are just not true.
Yeah.
That he thinks would like them to be true, or somebody might have told him they didn't check out, that's just dumb.
Yeah.
So,
Well, my indication is, and I was really kind of setting you up, I guess, for something I wanted to say, but Chris Christie tells the great story about when he was in New Hampshire and doing campaigning, and he was at a small group, and this woman came up to him and said that, "Geez, Governor, I think you're great. I like your ideas. You're a wonderful person." And Christie says to her, "Oh, then you're going to support me?" And she says, "No, I'm not going to support a politician this time." And at that point, he says he knew he was done. Like in the election in 2016.
because Trump would win because he wasn't a politician?
Yeah, like whoever it was, they weren't going to vote for this woman was not going to vote for a politician, even though she just finished saying what a great guy Chris Christie was. So, and we know that, and we know there was just a big block of voters who were going to vote for anybody but Hillary Clinton. So we had this guy Andrew Yang, who's one of the Democrats, which is an interesting discussion too, because he's going to be on the stage with the Democrats on their first debate. Because he qualified, because he got the number of individual donors. I mean, that couldn't have happened 10 years ago, right? 15 years ago, because you got the individual donors through the internet.
Oh, okay.
So NBC decided that to qualify for the debate, you remember the mess the Republicans got into, and they had
16 people
60
up there,
people,
yeah.
and they cut people out, right?
Yeah,
I can't
they
remember.
had two different debates.
Yeah, the baby table or the Charles table or something. So anyway, so we had this guy, Andrew Yang, who is, nobody knows about him, or very few people do, although it is interesting that he's got this theory about universal basic income to guarantee a couple $1,000s to everyone every month, which is another discussion, but it's getting some traction. But anyway, so he's going to be in the debate stage, but he was at the paper last week, and we had this meeting with about 40 people, and it went very well. And so on the way out, he's gone, but there were two middle-aged guys who independently came up to me and said, you know, I voted for Trump last time, and I'm going to vote for this guy. Now,
So you invited the public to come in?
yeah,
and
we had
hear-
we had 40 people, and you know, it is one of those things when you listen to somebody, they sound mostly they can be convincing. So
You've spoken highly of this guy before in the last show.
yeah,
Go ahead.
and so he just has fresh ideas, and he's just not a typical Democrat. And like we asked him about whether he wanted to eliminate the Electoral College, which to me is just like the Lane Blaniest thing that the Democrats, you lose an election, so you want to change the rules, basically. And that's what he said. So he definitely has clarity of thought. But the point is that these two middle-aged guys on their way out independently told me that they were going to vote for Yang, and I doubt that they do. They'll probably vote for somebody else. But the point is, those were the swing voters that were the anybody but Hillary.
Anti-establishment.
Yeah, anti-establishment, anti-Hillary, voted for Trump, and now they've already said they're not going to vote for Trump.
So isn't he from the private sector somewhere?
Yeah.
Yang? Okay, so he's a businessman.
He's a high-tech guy, yeah.
Does he work for someone, or does he
No,
have his own
he
firm?
was a partner, made a bunch of money, and then he found this thing called Venture for America, which was an
Okay,
entrepreneurial
so he has
startup.
he was never
No affiliation, no
no
current
political
affiliation.
background.
Yeah.
Other than that, well, that's refreshing.
Yeah,
In that sense, he's like Trump.
yeah. In that sense, then they both have 2 feet too, but that's about it. And his theory is, and this I'll just tell you one more thing, and maybe if I said it last week, or last month, but I think it's very, very interesting, is that, you know, when you look at the why Trump won, which is in the Midwest, as we know, and he says that's where over the last 20 years, we've lost millions and millions of jobs, right? Millions and millions of jobs in the Midwest. And he says there's a direct correlation between those disenfranchised people in the Midwest who lost their jobs, who are really the core of Trump's support. And what Yang is saying is that over the next 30 years, we're going to be losing times 10 jobs
Automation.
for automation. And he said, so his objective view, which makes sense, and my personal feeling has always been we have to really worry about this inequality of income, because you'll end up with the French Revolution. You know, it says, so this time we bounce to this guardrail and get Trump.
So he's going for this $1,000 a month thing.
Yeah, but what happens when another 50 million people lose their jobs? Who do we go to next time? It could be somebody way on the left. It could be someone way on the right, and that's his basic campaign theme, which I think is a good one.
Well, I'm skeptical. I just don't like the government just giving out $1,000 a month to anybody that isn't needy. You know, I mean, welfare is one thing, but just cash with no strings attached, it just doesn't sit right with me. Now, he has a rationale for it. I think I read Marvel's column. He talked about that a bit. And I read some of the teletalk stuff, but but not all of it. So we'll see. I mean, I'd like to hear him debate. I'd like to hear him be questioned on that particular aspect of his platform, and see how he responds.
It's going to be tough.
It's going to be hard to convince me that that's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, and Joe Rogan, I don't know if you listen to Joe Rogan. He's got this
Does he have
podcast.
a British accent?
No, he's a guy from Boston, actually. He's a comedian.
Okay, because there's another Rogan with a British accent. Go ahead.
Anyway, he has this podcast, which is like one of the most popular podcasts in the country. He gets more people than ABC
Heard
News.
of him then, all right.
Anyway, but Yang was on his show for an hour and a half. If you listen to him for an hour and a half, it starts to make intellectual sense. If he gets 30 seconds on a debate stage with 10 other people, he's going to sound like a nut. So that's going to be his challenge, is to try to get that across.
If he gets any more traction, then I'll have to look into it.
Yeah.
So I'll check out this podcast.
Right.
Where if he goes into it in depth, I'll do that. So there are two other issues. I mentioned the Justice Smollett thing, but also there's the arrest of Michael Avenatti, and that's happened, I think, over the weekend. And that has, I've been flabbergasted by the Justice Smollett thing, because of the different threads and connections that there are to other things. For example, When Avenatti was arrested, I thought, well, good. You know, I mean, I've always considered him a sleaze, and the stuff he tried to do to Kavanaugh, you know, was just underhanded. And then for the Democrats to recruit him, I mean, he was invited by Democrats in New Hampshire to come here and campaign, and you know, I thought, whoa, that's a stretch. So now that he's arrested for shaking down Nike, now we don't know that he did it, but you know, he's been arrested, so we'll see. He's allegedly shook them down for $20-something million. You know,
But
he had some dirt
I'm
on
always
them.
surprised when you talk about people in crime, because I know you defended Paul Manafort, you know, and as a person who was compared to what's her name, the Hillary's.
I've defended Paul Manafort.
Yeah.
When have I ever defended
Well,
him?
last time you said that you compared him to, who is the woman who is Hillary's right-hand person? Her husband is Weiner.
Oh, I see her
Adeline.
face. I can't think of her name. But go
Yeah,
ahead.
but you know, because we had this discussion before, and you
Yeah.
said that she was equally as bad as he was, because you had traced her. She had a connection to the Muslim Brotherhood. Remember
Yeah,
that?
her mother was
Yeah.
editor
So I'm
of
just
the
wondering
paper.
if you're worried about people like Avenatti, who's got his own issues, but then people like Paul Manafort, who's going to jail. You know, but you give those people a kind of a free ride.
Okay. I
don't-
just saw
I
something
just-
this morning. It was in the Hill, and it was a guy named John Solomon. He's broken quite a few stories lately. I don't know if you've read him.
No.
But he said that he just came up with the Ukrainian. Remember, John Podesta and his brother Tony were also working for this Ukrainian guy, same one Manafort was working for. And Manafort, you know, what he's going to jail for is laundering money and so forth that he made in Ukraine. Well, the Podesta brothers were right in there with him on the same team, advising these Ukrainians. And then this Ukrainian official just broke to Solomon that it was Hillary's campaign that leaked information, a notebook on Manafort, to whom? To some U.S., to Mueller, to the Mueller people, the FBI and Mueller people, and that's what was used. So, I mean, Manafort seems to have had it coming. I mean, he did some, you know, things. Nobody disputes that, you know, he did some criminal things.
Anyway, back to
But
Avenatti. So your point about him.
Avenatti, he was indicted along with another attorney. And the other attorney was Margolis or Margolin, something like that, who was an attorney for Justice Smollett. Now, that was interesting, okay, that they both happened at the same time. And now Justice Smollett looks, so we talked about him before, and I talked about him especially because he's, you know, he fabricated this hate crime, allegedly fabricated. He hasn't been convicted yet. He's been indicted, 16 counts, felony counts, for saying guys with MAGA hats and said, this is MAGA country. So it's looking at a smear on the so-called deplorables, the racist, homophobic, xenophobic, you name it, deplorables that Hillary would speak to. And now he is broomed. All right, so why? You know, why was he broomed? It looks, the woman, Nellie Fox, who was the state attorney, as they call the prosecutor over there, I guess. She was friends with Michelle Obama's former chief of staff, who went and spoke to her saying, please go talk to the Chicago police chief, right after Smollett's incident, before he was found to have fabricated it, allegedly. And then the police chief said, no, please turn this over to the FBI and let them handle it. And the police chief got indignant and said, no, stay out of this. We're going to investigate this. And then Nellie Fox recused herself because of some, you know, she knew the family, the Smollett family, something like that. Well, then her assistant was the one who yesterday broomed the charges. And everyone is ticked off, including Mayor Rahm Emanuel,
Yeah.
former chief of staff for the Obama administration, Obama presidency. He's indignant. Everyone's indignant. It looks like politically the dumbest thing that the left could have done. So that's one connection. The next is this woman, Nellie Fox, got $400,000.
Now, which part of the left? It's not, you're talking about not the mayor of
George
Chicago.
Soros
'cause
gave
there's
her
a whole bunch-
$400,000. Talk about the sugar daddy of the left, George Soros. Also, financed Hillary Clinton and the Obama administration. Also is financing this foundation for investigating hate crimes and documenting hate crimes. He's got his fingers in so many different left-wing causes. So he supported Nellie Fox to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. So there's an Obama connection, a Soros connection, and I don't think I'm even done. There are other. That's all I can think of. So who wins in this? I mean, yesterday's events, it was bad enough that there was this allegedly fake cake, and the evidence of it, the two Nigerians that were arrested, they have testified. There are videotapes that I've seen, most everyone has seen, of them, buying the stuff that they allegedly, supposed to have assaulted him with, and he wrote a personal check and signed it to them, and so much evidence that's hard evidence that they had this guy. And then 16 felonies gone because he did 16 hours of community service with Rainbow Push, Jesse Jackson's outfit, and paid a $10,000 bond that he's going to forfeit. And that's it? And that's enough for this guy? I mean, this is outrageous to everyone, and I think it's already backfiring big time.
If it's outrageous to everyone, and I can't compete with you because I don't spend my time looking at all those details on a sensational case like this. Quite frankly, I can't rebut all those connections you have. But if it's outrageous to everybody, why is it such a leftist thing? Because it doesn't make any sense. Like, why doesn't, where's the other part of the left that are outraged? Everybody's outraged with this.
Well, that's what Rahm Emanuel, I was surprised that he went out.
What do you mean? Everybody is. I mean,
so maybe Rahm is seeing the light here.
Well, it's not just Rahm. It's like everybody who's, the little bit that I've read about it, it just seems like one of those incredible things. You ascribe it to the leftists working. Some people ascribe it to the fact that the guy's just a star. So he gets off. He paid his way off. Not everybody has the $10,000. So there's a whole bunch of other reasons. I guess the general question is why when everybody, just what you said, is outraged, and the left is outraged too. Everybody's outraged. It just seems incomprehensible why he got off, given the evidence. Then why do you just ascribe it to this long trail of conspiratorial connections?
Because of the people involved.
Okay. All right.
Why not to be on the left? Especially George Soros.
Some of the left, but not all the left, obviously, because mainstream left people.
Michelle Obama, I'd say she's on the left.
You don't think she's outraged by this?
It looks like she's. Her chief of staff has got her fingers in it.
Okay.
There it is.
You want to go to number 2?
Okay.
How much time do we have?
I don't know.
How much?
Wow. So, should presidential candidates and members of Congress be required to release their tax returns? I don't think so. No. I think they're running they're swimming in political waters, and if the politics of it say, we want to see your tax returns, and they refuse to do it and people still vote for them, then good for them, like Trump, for example. So, no, I don't think they should have to.
Should they submit to security clearances?
That's a good question. I think they should. Obama never would have got one if that was true. He should never have gotten a security clearance based on the connections that he had.
In your opinion, you don't know that for a fact.
According to some people who issue have said so.
Then then he must have, though.
I'm not sure the president gets a security clearance. I mean, it's just
everybody in government gets a security clearance.
That's a good question. I mean, did Obama get a security clearance? I don't think he did. He wouldn't have gone through the same process. If he did, that I would have to. If I used to have a security clearance, but he wouldn't have. If he had to go through a standard procedure, he would not have gotten one, based on his connections, especially with radical Islam.
Okay, that's your opinion. I just don't. It's hard to believe that the President of the United States doesn't have standard security clearances, doesn't have to pass standard security clearances?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I'd wonder if he does.
I know that, the Trump,
And if he
there's
got
a
elected,
conspiracy thing, right? Because, the reason why even when we have Trump is how did he make his name? How did Trump make his name back in 2015? What brought him the national spotlight?
Let's see.
Birther.
I would say
The birther.
The what?
The birther.
Oh.
Accusing Obama of not being a U.S.
In
citizen.
2015?
I think so.
I think it was earlier than that.
Okay, maybe it was the
He-
first
yeah.
election.
I think it was.
Yeah, 4 years.
Well,
Right,
maybe
that's right.
during the Romney thing, during 2012.
Yeah.
So I think what brought him to prominence was promising to build a wall and to stop illegal
What
immigration.
brought him the prominence was the birther movement.
He did get notoriety
Yeah.
for that, yes.
That really got
He
him
did.
national notoriety.
Okay.
But anyway, getting back to the taxes, since this, I would, we don't have very many presidents, and I just don't see, I don't see anything wrong with having them. I want my president, I want to know everything about my president. If you're going to run for president, I don't think there should be any secrets about you. And I think I think it's fair game to see what your business connections are.
Well, then you have the choice of voting for them or not voting for
Yeah.
them. Yeah, which I think is the way it ought to be.
Yeah, okay.
Let's see. So, so Michael Avenatti brought that up. It's a good thing that this broke before he did decide to put his hat in the ring. I don't think that would have helped much. But the Democrat effort. Do you still? Okay, Andrew Yang seems to be your person. Is he?
No, not
do you-
necessarily. I just think I like his ideas.
Okay.
I
do
just
you
think-
like anybody else?
Well, I think
That's running.
Mayor Pete.
Uh-huh.
He's the rising star.
Can
His
you say
last
his name?
No, I can't. I haven't said.
Buttigieg?
Is that what it is?
Buttigieg, something
Yeah.
like that. He's the mayor of
I
South
think
Bend, Indiana. Yeah.
He's gay, so he's not going to be your guy. I know, but it's but
that's
he's
not fair.
But and I'm sure you'll find the connections. I can't wait till we talk about him some other time. But boy, he seems like a very incredibly bright, and he checks all the boxes, right? He's Harvard, Oxford, military, and he's incredibly gifted and bright. And so I think he's a rising star. So those are the two guys that interest me. But it's so early, and I just like and as you paint me as a liberal, but I think some of the standard democratic platforms of now changing the electoral college and all that kind of stuff, I think it's just too extreme.
Where is Buttigieg on these things? So when you said he checks all the boxes,
As a
none of
candidate.
that to me is way down the list. All those qualifications, supposed qualifications. To me, where are you on the issues?
Yeah.
So that is those first and foremost, and everything else is like way below.
Yeah.
What's your platform?
Yeah.
And where is he on those issues?
Yeah, I can't tell you, but his approach is reasonable. It's like, and I'm just not that familiar, but I am familiar with Yang. And for instance, as one reason I like Yang, which is the same, I just can't remember about Mayor Pete. I've only heard him on TV a couple times.
Yeah.
But when Yang was asked about gun control, he didn't have the pat answer. Oh, we should outlaw, ban AR-15s or something. He said, look, it's an emotional issue on both sides, and and he addressed it that way. It has, something, that's going to resolve itself some way. Let's just be reasonable about it.
What would be politically feasible?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that just seems
the
like
art of the possible, as
Yeah.
politics says. Okay. Well, that's a good answer.
Yeah.
We have a minute left.
Go ahead.
Well, I had so many things. I have about 6 MAGA hat incidents.
Oh my gosh.
But speaking of one thing about this, when Jussie Smollett thing broke, okay, it was allegedly a fake hate crime. Here's a real fake hate crime that broke around the same time. The Detroit News reported Monday that law enforcement charged Nikki Jolie, a transgender man, which means it's a woman who thinks she's a man, burned down her own home, killing 5 pets inside, which was initially investigated by the FBI as an alleged hate crime in 2017. She set it up. She burned down her own home, killed her own pets, and here's the reason why it was given for her. She was frustrated that the controversy over gay rights had died down with the passage of the non-discrimination law in Michigan. So she wants to revive this, this indignation of, this idea that homosexuals are still being persecuted by people, and she didn't like that it had died down. And that, is that in the Jussie Smollett thing as well. Trying two victims groups, black, homosexual. So
I'll just say one
more thing,
quick
and then
thing
we'll wrap it up.
is that next time let's talk about Twitter, social media, and how it's leaning left or not, because I'll agree with you with something on this.
Okay, next time.
Next time.
Next month. All right, we got to wrap it up. We're all done. Thank you, folks, for coming. And I'll be going to Ireland. I won't be back in 2 more weeks, and maybe the next time will be the next month with you.
Yeah,
We'll see.
I think I'm on the schedule.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Tom.
All right.
Always a pleasure.
Yep, indeed.